Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Subscription Scaled. I'm your host, Nick Frederick. With me today is Samantha Coxe, who is the founder and CEO of Flaus. Samantha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to get to be here today.
Well, we're glad to have you on. Appreciate you taking the time. You know, uh, Best place to start is always at the beginning. So why don't you tell us what Flaus is, and then tell us how you came around to start it.
Yeah, definitely. Flaus is the world's first electric flosser. Think of like your electric toothbrush, but for flossing. I came up with the idea for Flaus about 4 years ago. At the time, I was a mergers and acquisitions attorney at Skadden, which is a massive law firm. And I had that dreaded dentist appointment pop up in my calendar. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh no, I need to start flossing. At the time, I was an amazing twice a day toothbrusher, horrible flosser. So about
Okay.
a week leading up to this appointment, I started vigorously flossing. So when I got in the dentist chair, I answered, yeah, I've been flossing. And right away, she knew I was a liar. I ended up coming home with a massive dental bill. I admittedly have had like 9 cavities, something crazy. And I came home and I was like, you know what? I'm so invested in my smile, my teeth, my skin, everything. But like, I hate flossing. And then I
Hmm.
thought, I love using my electric toothbrush. Why don't I just go buy an electric flosser could do it for me? And I actually went online to go buy one. And that's when I discovered this didn't exist. And so
Oh.
that was really that light bulb moment where I was like, no way. It was like, when new things come out and you're like, how did no one think of this before? This was one of those moments. And it just
Yeah.
right into my lap. And yeah, and so that was like the origination. And over the following weeks, I started talking to my friends and colleagues at the firm. And, I had never talked to people about their oral care habits before. So I think I assumed everyone was flossing. But it was when I started talking to other people that I realized, wow, flossing's a massive pain point for most people. It's difficult to do, it's time consuming, it's gross, it's painful, it's wasteful. And those pain points were very uniform. So that was really when I recognized that this is a massive market opportunity. This is a daily consumable, something that people are being told they must be doing. And it's such an unsexy space. So I just
Hmm.
immediately almost had a vision of what this could be.
Yeah. What I'm curious though, you said you went to look for it and it wasn't on the market, which is surprising to me too. What prevented the big guys, especially ones that already have these electric toothbrushes, from getting into, electric flossers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a couple of investors who have spent decades at these larger companies like Oral-B and whatnot. And these were questions I was running by them. And, you know, they were already in the floss string and floss pick space. So we were kind of coming across the hypothesis and the theory that this would just provide cannibalization for the products they already had and things that they're already doing at such mass scale. And, they were investing in water picks or whatnot, but
Okay.
I think flossing is it was such an unsexy category. And for an electric toothbrush, that price point is so much higher even with a water pick or water flosser, it makes a lot more sense that those big conglomerates were doubling down on those types of products than floss. And so it was really this amazing opportunity. We couldn't believe there was no patents on this or anything. And so,
Mhm.
we now have those patents.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. You were the the first mover there, but that is really surprising that that's not something those big guys invested in. But your background wasn't I mean, you were in M&A, you were in legal, but like that's a big leap over to starting something from the ground up. So talk us through that process and like what you were learning there in those early days.
Yeah, absolutely. It was such a 180, and I always love to tell this story. So I remember when I was leaving the firm, it was good practice to call all the other partners you ever worked with and tell them you're leaving. And most people, when they're leaving Skadden, they're going to another law firm or they're going in house to a very like prestigious company.
Hmm.
When I called them, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm putting in this will be my last day." They're like, "Oh, so what are you gonna go do?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna start an electric flosser." And they were like, you could always come back here. That was their response. And yeah, which was so funny, but I actually had quite a few of them, a couple of them actually say, I wish I would have taken that leap of faith. I also had an idea a couple, whatever, decades ago, years ago, and I
Hmm.
was scared. And so that also really empowered me as well, that I was like, I don't ever want to live with that regret of what could have been or what this opportunity could have looked like. And something that I like to remind myself is that you'll never regret an investment in yourself ever. So I knew that this was an investment in myself and my dreams. And so when I first came up with the idea, again, I went around and talked to my colleagues and um, before leaving, because I was so heavily invested in being a lawyer, mind you, I took the bar. I mean, I took the
Yeah.
I went to law school. I took the bar. I'm practicing like I am took on student debt for this. Like I am like
hmm
knee deep into being a lawyer. Um, and I just wanted to make sure before I took that leap of faith that there was going to be market demand for this idea. I in no way wanted to just like would just start
Yeah.
something and see what happens. So I did a lot of diligence before I left. So I did a ton of diligence into the space, into what prior products had existed, why hasn't this existed before, into just the electric toothbrush market. And I ended up doing a survey monkey. It was like $1,000, sent it out to 600 people across the US. And it was extremely validating of the idea. I was like, okay, this has some traction. And so then what I did initially was, again, as you mentioned, I'm not an engineer. I don't have any oral care background. I went and I found those people. I found 2 dentists to get on board, one who was my neighbor at the time, and I brought them on board, and then I went and found an engineer just through being scrappy, Googling, doing some research, looking at other
Mm.
companies and products I like, and
Okay.
doing some piecing it together. Who did they work with? Because I think on this journey, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's so
Right.
many people who have done this, and
hmm
if you find the right mentors, you can learn so much, not only from their success, but from their failures. So it was really just hustling it out and talking to others who had done this before and
Yeah.
finding the right partners that gave me enough courage and momentum to be able to leave.
Okay. So to take a little bit of a step back, I'm wondering, and I'm sure other people are too, when you decided to step away from a career path that you had been on for a really long time and that stability and everything else that you had built up to get to that point, where in the floss life cycle was it when you finally said, I'm comfortable enough now to quit my job and dive in with both feet?
Definitely. So, great question. It was early days. So, I actually worked on Flaus for a little over a year while I was at the firm. So, I was working
Okay.
on it. I got this validation. I found my engineer and I started prototyping like 3D prints, things that were,
hmm
um, and I was just, doing these things on the side on my weekends at night, and getting just so much validation. And as I was going through this process, um, I was getting feedback from potential investors that they wanted to see that people were willing to put down their credit card. So, and again, we had no product to sell. It was just
hmm
really, we're basically just an idea form now and very, very early days. And so I decided to launch an Indiegogo campaign. And I knew putting like just making that decision to do that, to not only be able to fundraise to kick off manufacturing production, but to be able to show market demand and
Yeah.
traction.
Yeah.
I knew that that couldn't go live while I was at the firm. So
Okay.
setting that stake in the ground was really when I was like, whether I'm ready or not, this is happening. It is go time. And
yeah.
so had a coach helping me as well.
Okay. Awesome. Well, that made a lot of sense, and you kind of you set yourself some goalposts, right? That you could at least get to before you made that official leap.
Absolutely. And I think for so many people who have a career like I did with law or finance or whatever it is, you're just constantly following these steps. There's a path. And then to go and take this huge 180 risk in turn and now doing something where there is no certainty in anything I'm doing. I still today know that now I'm 2.5 years later, full-time Flouse, and there's still no certainty with what I'm doing. So that has been an adjustment. But again, like I have such an incredible community of mentors and advisors who have done this and who even the
Awesome.
most successful ones who tell me that they still feel that way. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
just part
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. So, okay, you've built your prototype. You've got something now, and you launched that Indiegogo campaign. So you've got some people who are interested in it. Talk us through the early days of getting to market. Like, how did you offer this? And did you ever consider the just distribution model that you were going to just build these things and then let others kind of put them out into the wild instead of going the direct to consumer route?
Yeah, absolutely. So At the time when I first came up, when I first started Flouse and came up with the idea, it was back in 2019. So this was really in like the heyday of direct consumer being extremely hot. Quip came on the scene soon during that period. They were really like the trailblazer of innovating in oral care as a direct consumer model, which props to them and everything they've done. And so at the time, it just seemed like such an obvious model to go after, the direct consumer model. Now,
Hmm.
of course, fast forward 4 years, and that's not so obvious anymore. And I think now we actually, once you pull back the curtains and you see that, you know, for a lot of brands, it's not a sustainable business model. And so, but initially starting out, at the time, it made sense to do direct to consumer. We could control the brand narrative, the brand story. We could control that customer data and really understand who is our customer, why are they buying this product, and it was through that, and quite honestly, Indiegogo, that we have had some of our biggest insights. So I started Flouse as a non-flosser thinking, I'm going to help other non-flossers start flossing. And while we have a huge segment of non-flossers, our biggest demographic is the daily flosser. It's the person that's already doing it. They're already bought into why flossing is important, but they want an easier, quicker, more comfortable way to do it. So being able to have control of that customer data and be able to own that relationship where we can reach out to them and I can get on a call with them has been so incredibly important, not only as a young consumer product brand, but also in terms of just hardware product development where you really have to measure twice and cut
Back.
once.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So are you guys still 100% direct to consumer now or
Yes. So right
distributing?
now, we had actually been in beta for the past year. So we have about over 9,000 customers and Flouse is out in the wild purely through betas. Half of that through Indiegogo, another half just direct consumer on our website.
Okay.
And we just officially like hard launched Flouse last week. So we've been around, but we have not been fully out to market with like press, scaling up ad spend, everything like that. And
Okay.
right now, what the strategy is we are focused direct to consumer as we're still learning from our customer audiences, but also we have a dental ambassador program going. So we've actually had over 200 dental professionals organically reach out to us being like, none of my patients floss. Like, this seems like something that they would be excited about. Can I
Yeah.
get involved? And so
Hmm.
we're using our dental ambassadors and professionals as sort of an affiliate program. So a
Beautiful.
dentist gets a
Yeah.
Flouse, they obviously have to stand behind the product and love the
Hmm.
product. So they get it, they try it. If they love it, which most of them do, and they're just like, "This is amazing and so cool in our packaging, everything." They love it. It's very
Hmm.
fresh for the oral care space, and they then get a special promo code, and they'll recommend it out to patients. The patients will get a really sizable discount, and then the dental professional will also get a reward for doing that. And
Okay.
we're really focused on creating this community around our dental professionals and having them be involved in product innovation and feedback and whatnot. So right now that being said, we're driving all of them back onto our website. So right now everything's direct to consumer. However, over the next 1, 2, 3 years, our plan is to look towards other distribution models, including Amazon and retail, both small box and big box, because
Okay.
the number one location people buy personal care items. It's still in store.
Yeah. Makes a heck of a lot of sense. I mean, in a way, this is not unlike influencer marketing that a lot of other brands are doing, but I would say it has that unique spin on recommended by a dental professional, has a little bit of a different connotation than somebody who's just
Well,
got a million followers on
I mean,
Instagram.
absolutely. And that again, from being able to own this customer data, we've done a lot of surveys and one of the number one purchasing consideration is knowing it has dentist
Really?
backing. And
Yeah.
if it makes sense, we're a class 1 medical grade device. So, we're undergoing clinical trials, so we're not making any sort of like efficacy claims yet, even
Okay.
though we're excited to do that. But
Hmm.
just to have dentists backing it and using it and being like, this is I'm seeing my gums and my patient's gums cleaner. I'm seeing that they're actually doing it. The number one issue with floss is compliance. So people actually sticking with it. And
Hmm.
over 80% of our customers self-report flossing more regularly. So this is something that like we're seeing the dental community be drawn towards. And yeah, that's something we want to harness, utilizing the influencer network, but putting it towards a medical professional community.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you already hinted at it, but you are though incentivizing those dentists to promote the product.
Absolutely. And, and I think that this is something that's coming as an outsider coming into this space now as a founder. And it's pretty surprising once you pull back the curtains and you see how the sausage is made and you see that that's how all those products are being pushed,
Hmm.
the water flossers, the Philips Sonicare, that's how it's all happening. And so it's pretty interesting when you learn that you're like, but that being said, these are medical professionals. They're not someone that's just going to push a product. Like they have to be able to stand behind the product. So
Right.
it's a little bit different, but yeah, there's incentives for them to be pushing out product.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I think you said you're up to basically 9,000 subscribers at this point for the product. What do you see the typical journey there being? I imagine the first purchase, and I think on the website, it's $99 for the first shipment, right? Which includes the electronics itself, and then you're getting the heads. Is it every 3 months?
Yeah, exactly. So you'll buy the Flaus Essentials kit upfront for 99, and that comes with the Flaus device, a charging base, a charging cable, and then 45 recyclable floss heads, which if you're flossing every day, that's a month and a half supply. If you're an every other day flosser, that's a 3 month supply. And then we have the subscription component to it where um every 3 months you'll get a delivery of 90 heads. So again, another 3 month supply if you're flossing every day, potentially
Hmm.
6 months if you're not. And it's for $15 or $5 a month. So really comparable to what you're getting in the store. And we have a lot of customers who are able to use the floss more than once. We recommend doing it one time. And we use 30% less plastic than traditional floss picks. Obviously, you're only using 1 inch of floss, so it's 95% less than what you'd be doing with floss string. And then we have an entire recycling program where um, something that's been crazy to learn about is like how wasteful, and that's some issues with subscription pieces to these businesses is especially in everyday consumables, the amount of waste that's created. So making sure we're doing our part to be able to collect these floss heads and making sure that they're going to a dedicated oral care waste management facility that specializes in teeny tiny items because otherwise they fall through the facilities and end up in our oceans and sea animals. So
Oh,
we're
yeah.
really trying to do our best to have a full like circular approach.
Yeah, that are you trying to put that environmental responsibility message out front, in the
Um,
purchase flow?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something we could do more of. So to be honest, we've been, building this kind of as we're going and we're figuring out how we want to be positioning this because consumers today are just so smart and on all these different claims that some of these companies make. And so
Yeah.
we're really trying to find the right balance of how do we emphasize this on the purchase flow that people are like, okay, especially our eco warriors, where they are not feeling guilty about it, but then also including it in the subscription flow, right? Of saying, hey, when you get these heads, as a reminder, keep your little baggie, put your used heads in there. We'll send you a free shipping label, and then trying to reward them for taking part of this program.
Yeah, that's great. Do you think you have a subset of customers who are buying specifically for that reason?
Definitely. We have certain
Yeah.
ones that are, and I think that we still have a long way to go on making the product as eco-friendly as possible. But we definitely have a subset of customers that are just like, I feel horrible using these floss picks and just tossing them every day. Whereas Flouse is just it's a more eco-friendly version of that. And plus with the recycling program, it really helps to minimize that impact. And I think that's top of mind for a lot of our younger consumers.
Yeah, that's great. What are you guys doing in the face of, 9,000 customers, the recurring subscriptions going out, but this is a physical good, right? And their consumption rates may vary even from what they originally intended, right? So are you seeing customers saying, "Wait, I've just built up way too much of a supply. I want to cancel," or just push out their next shipment dates? And how are you guys accommodating for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. That is absolutely something we're dealing with. That because we're not really able to predict how often people are using the product yet. And eventually, hopefully, we will be able to do that in a future version of Flouse, but right now we're not. And so we're really trying to utilize email, SMS, and then no commerce on the back end. So specifically with no commerce, what they do, and I love them, is that we have a post purchase survey that's on the order confirmation page. So it gets so much more click through and engagement than just a email survey that you send after. And we're
Hmm.
finding out from these customers, how often are they currently flossing right now before buying Flaus? So that way we have a better sense. Is this a never flosser? Is this an everyday, twice a day flosser? Is this a once a week flosser? So we can take that information and segment these customers out so we can be proactive in reaching out to them, whether it's email or SMS, to be like, hey, you have your refill coming up. Do you need us to push it out? Versus them, as you mentioned, getting too many heads and then that leading to churn. And right now we're using Recharge for our subscription flow. We're actually moving over to Smarter. We're in the process of moving over to Smarter as our new subscription provider. And
Hmm.
one of the reasons is to have a better customer UX experience. We found that customers were kind of having a hard time managing their subscriptions. And so we wanted to go over to a different platform that, really prioritized the customer's experience of being able to pause, pick a new date, everything like that. And then also hitting the customers with some survey questions if they do want to churn out and they say, I have too many heads, help let us understand how often are they currently flossing. So, and again, we have the data when they first got the unit and now they're telling us how often they're using it. We can then hit them again to try to encourage to bring them back into the subscription once we
Yeah.
know they're closer to finishing versus them just being overloaded with product.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What about the customer who's like, that's not the reason. It has nothing to do with heads. I'm just not using it. Whatever other reason they might come up with. Are you guys have any retention flows or anything you're doing to try to educate them and perhaps keep them on?
Absolutely. And, when you have people wanting to cancel your subscriptions or whatnot, I think legally it's required that it needs to be super easy. You can't just like lock them into these things. And so for
Right.
people that have other reasons, being like, my teeth are too tight, or I prefer my water pick or something, my water floss or something like that, we have segmented flows. So for example, with the water flosser, we're then educating them saying, it's great if as opposed to using nothing, it's great you're using something. But according to dental professionals, water flossers are not a true replacement for string floss. It's an ancillary product. So if you're using both a string floss and a water flosser, you're an A plus flosser. But if you had to choose between the two, you should go with a string floss. And
Okay.
so having those sort of like educational moments to try to bring customers back
Okay.
in. Um,
Hmm.
something else we do too that I think is really, really smart is to the extent the product doesn't work for a certain customer, we encourage them to give it to someone else that they think would like the product. Because this is an oral care product. We can't take it back and resell it. It's pretty much done. And
Right.
so instead of it just leading to waste and us having to spend a lot of money taking back the return, processing it through our 3PL, encouraging them to give it to someone else who might really like it. And we've seen
Yeah.
a lot of positive customer sentiment from that strategy.
Interesting. Okay. So you can have customers that come in and become new subscribers, but don't get the initial kit, I guess.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and because they're
Okay.
and which is still great, and that's still a higher LTV, and it's a very
Yeah.
interesting way to go about it, but we're trying to do everything we can, especially on the subscription side, to personalize and customize it, but of course, given all these privacy laws and everything that's been going in, it's challenging to do. So trying to get creative with these surveys and these emails and the SMS and just trying to figure out how can we meet the customer where they are. And something that we learned during our beta period was the initial Flaus kit came with 90 heads in the initial box. And what we found is that that was too long of a touch period to either get our one-time subscribers into a subscription flow or just touch our subscribers again. So that's why we actually halved it down into 45. So that way
Okay.
we can be bringing them through the customer journey a lot sooner.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yep.
Well, a lot of things you've talked about, Samantha, have been things that on the surface kind of fly in the face of revenue. Like you've almost been like, I'm going to let them leave or I'm going to let them push out their next order, those types of things, which to be honest, in a lot of the successful companies that I've talked with on the show, they do adopt those policies. Even when they don't make sense, perhaps to the CFO, they're still a good way to treat the customer so that even if they go away, they've had a good experience, they'll
Yep.
still talk about you positively. And in a lot of cases, will come back later. Is that your philosophy?
100%. We are so customer centric as a company. And I think for anyone that's developing, especially a hardware consumer product, the customer is everything. Every assumption you have has to be built around a customer and customer data sets. And being able to go over and beyond for your customers, even the ones who are unhappy, I believe is pivotal for any brand's success right now. And because the name of the game right now is customer retention, it's going and getting, further orders or revenue from a current customer is so much less expensive than going to have to find new customers. And
Right.
even with
Mhm.
customers who are unhappy and say they didn't like the product, to be able to give them this incredible customer service experience of really catering to them and personalizing it, we know it's just gonna have them potentially come back, but also leave with that positive sentiment to go spread it elsewhere, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really like
Yeah.
you're planting these seeds and you're watering them, and you're not gonna see the immediate gratification and validation for these decisions. And while short term, it might seem like it's taking a hit to revenue, I truly believe long term, it's going to increase our revenue because we have a loyal, happy customer base. And again, it's all about customer retention.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head there. It's all about retention these days because acquiring customers is so expensive. And we've
Oh,
hit on
so
this a little bit, but as you move forward, especially, what do you see as the channels that are going to be really key for you guys to acquire brand new customers, maybe not through the existing channels?
definitely. Well, I think leaning into the dental professionals and even much harder than we have been is going to be huge. I think that that's going to be an incredible distribution channel for us. So many people buy their oral care products from their dental office visits. And then I think also retail is going to be massive for us as well. Again, personal care items are most typically bought in stores. So making sure we're showing up where customers are going to buy these products. And then finally, something that I'm really excited about is not only kind of venturing into some different product SKUs that we think are going to increase our customer audience size by going in a couple different directions. But once we prove out Flaus on the US scale, and I think you were kind of like talking about this, mention venturing into this, um, I think taking this internationally will be huge. From our Indiegogo campaign, we receive, I mean, this was 2 years ago, we receive on a weekly basis interest from distributors in Japan and South Korea, as well as some other international countries. And what we've learned is that certain of these countries are very hyper invested in oral care, particularly Japan and South Korea, and they love technology. So this is a very fits perfectly, and I think
Sure.
it's a and that's why our international patent strategy has been so important to us to make sure we do have that coverage. But I could see that being a really exciting opportunity for us because luckily, most people, founders will be like, oh, well, everyone can use this. Well, literally everyone should be flossing. Everyone that has teeth should be flossing anyways. And so I think potential international distribution is a really exciting opportunity for us.
Yeah, sounds like it is. Although I will say that and continuing to grow the brand, especially when you're talking about a physical product, right?
Yes,
These
typical.
devices have to be manufactured, can require a good bit of capital. So talk to us a
Yes.
little bit about, okay, where you are now and where you want to be, your growth plan. Are you going to have to go out and raise? What's that like? What are some of your challenges?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So, yeah, I oftentimes think back and I'm like, oh, like, why couldn't I have thought like Squatty Potty or Scrub Daddy? I'm like a consumer electronic underwear guy. I was like, geez, I really made it difficult. And because it is so capital intensive, it just is to put up these manufacturing lines and with the molds and the tools and these POs. And because of what's going on in the macroeconomic climate, these contract manufacturers really need to have a long history with you before they start giving you good payment terms. So, most terms are 50% deposit, 50% FOB upon shipment. And that is a huge cash outlay for any sort of brand like my own. So that has been one of the biggest challenges. And luckily there's some really great inventory financing options that are around now and a lot of companies that cater to startups. And so long as you make sure that it makes sense with your financial model, our goal is to try to get that cash conversion cycle as low as possible. But
Yeah.
in order to get us to where we are today, I did a $2 million pre-seed round that was right on the tails of our Indiegogo campaign. That was all friends and family. So my first 15 investors were my colleagues at the firm. Like
Nice.
my
Yeah.
partners invested, my colleagues invested. which was incredible. And they obviously saw me really excel at the firm. And I was like, imagine what I could do when I'm actually passionate about something I'm working on. Because I was very miserable there. Just in that, I think anyone doing those kind of big law hours, it's just, it's grueling on your mental health and physical health. But, yeah, and so I did my first 2 million, and that really got us through our first iteration of the product. I'm doing all the engineering, setting up our website, setting up our brand. I'm doing our first initial 10,000 PO, everything like that. And when you're starting off, you're going to make mistakes. Like we made certain mistakes. We had on our first batch 20% defect rate that was
Wow.
invisible to the human eye until it
Mm.
either got jostled in shipment or customers were actually using it. Which was that's in contract manufacturer terms, that's known as a catastrophic failure. And it got through QC, and it was invisible to the human eye. You can't see it until it's a hairline fracture in the neck that would appear over time. And so,
Oh, wow.
you make these mistakes. And again, I had one of my greatest mentors. His name is Dr. Jason. He's the founder of Theragun, formerly known as Theragun. And he was just like, "This happens. This is so normal." I remember I was like, "It's too loud." He's like, "It's good enough." He's like, "Get it out to market and learn from your consumers." And so that's where the first 2 million got me. It got me through Flaus, our beta product, Flaus One. And now I actually just recently closed my seed round. I did another 2 million. It was led by Yeti Capital. Um, not uh, uh, equity funding arm from the founders of Yeti Coolers.
Okay.
And that was really important to me, is to find a strategic investor who's had experience scaling premium consumer hardware goods. Although they're obviously not electronic, they are hardware, they are expensive, and they are so premium. And they've done an incredible job, not only on the product development side, but creating a brand around a very unsexy category. So there were so many synergies there. And so they led our most recent round. So bringing our total raise up to about $4 million. And, we have some really nice runway to pursue our clinical trials, to do some further product innovation, to get us to do some initial POs for retail. But most certainly, in order to hit our distribution plans, like get into Target and Sephora, I'm like, I hope they hear this. To
We'll
get
tag
it
them.
there,
We'll
yeah,
tag them. Yep.
yeah, to hear these things, like, to be able to do this, that inventory financing is massive. So we're gonna plan on doing a Series A, and ideally, that's gonna be the last funding I take on. Because we're supposed to be hitting profitability next year, in by Q2. And so ideally, I do one more raise. I have all my safes convert in this priced
Mhm.
round, and then I'm going to the end. And the goal here is eventually, to obviously create this oral beauty brand in this space and continue to innovate. But then, I think we would slot in perfectly with a Procter and Gamble or a Unilever. I think that this product would be a perfect portfolio company for them. So that's really my
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah, I was you actually just answered one of my other follow-up questions, is where could you see this going down the road? And it seems like it could be the kind of brand that would fit nicely into some very large companies' portfolio. So yeah.
Absolutely, and so many people have said, they're like, "Well, what is gonna stop?" I'm like, "These companies, they move so slow, and there's so much
Mhm.
bureaucracy for them to
Yeah.
make any decisions." Our fears of competition is much more with the other startups that are so much more nimble, can move quickly. But that being said, the oral care, especially the floss space, is massive, and we're now at this much higher price point that's only creating a more massive market. And to the extent, we do have other people enter into the space, it only provides further validation, further awareness, more customers, more money coming into the space. So we're really looking at this as like, yeah, we're pioneering this new space. And do we think we're going to be the only one? Probably not, but we want Flaus to be associated as like the electric flosser. That's the
Yeah.
goal.
Are there, you've mentioned a couple already, but are there any other brands that have launched that you kind of look at and go, maybe a Dollar Shave Club or something like that, that you're just like, okay, the model they followed, that's kind of what we're trying to do? Or are there any that you're like, I ain't doing that?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think that there's a lot of these companies where I think I'm not doing that, in the sense of I am so focused on trying to build a sustainable business model. Like finding, and as you're talking about Meta, like, you know, you it you could only scale so much on Meta before you have inefficient spend. And there I while I'm while these direct consumer companies before us really paved the way, now seeing them turn to try to do these IPOs and looking at their financials and being like the business fundamentals just weren't there, where
Hmm.
essentially they raised as much money as they actually brought in revenue, showing that there was actually a lack of demand for the product, and not product market fit. Those are
Yeah.
things, we will not be doing. And so I'm really focused, even if that comes at maybe we don't scale as quickly and grow as fast as we want, but if we can get to profitability so that we're not dependent on other people's money and we can build a sustainable business, I'm looking at those brands. So I'm looking at Therabody. I mean, they are just incredible what they've been able to do and bring in a tech component and really leaning into their different target demographics, from the athletes to the first responders who are working super late night shifts, to the parents, and all of those different things. I think that they've built an incredible business. And then, I mean, Dollar Shave Club is just, of course, looking at their model for the direct consumer and what they've been able to do and scale that up, and the resources and how they've positioned themselves, particularly in comparison to huge competition
Hmm.
of other things in the store, or even Harry's and whatnot. And
Yeah.
one of the brands that I really, really respect and I has always been on my mood board. It's the smaller brand, but it's a razor brand. It's called Billy's Razor. It's the
Okay.
female razor subscription company. And they just nailed it. They nailed it. Like, the product's amazing, the branding's amazing, the customer experience is amazing, and they got acquired within 3 years of launch. And they just, yeah, just I love what they've done with that business, and that has consistently been on my mood board.
Yeah, well, you named several brands there that got hyper focused on the end consumer, right? And going direct to consumer,
Yes.
and that experience that isn't just pulling something off of a shelf, but it's subscribing and getting things in the mail and the unboxing and everything that goes along with that.
Yes.
That is a fundamentally different consumer engagement model than just distributing it in Target, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why it's so important that you are thinking, not just with the product, but the unboxing and everything, as you mentioned. So I'm not sure if your uh, listeners can even see this, but you'll be able to see it. So we've really invested in the packaging. So making sure when people are opening it, they're
There you
like,
go.
"This is
Hmm.
unlike anything you would ever get at the store." But
Right.
also too, there's so many thoughtful points in here. So via Indiegogo, I discovered we have a huge accessibility community. We have a lot of blind customers because they have dexterity impairments or dexterity disabilities. So, which makes traditional string floss and floss picks physically impossible to use because they're too small. And so, what we've done is, even in our packaging, we've incorporated Braille throughout the entire
Amazing.
unboxing experience, and it
Yeah.
only added like 8 or 10 cents to our bill of materials on our packaging. But
Wow.
just having that, like, level of thoughtfulness, it's not only
Hmm.
incredible for the end consumer that actually needs it, but I also think it signals something to these other consumers that don't necessarily need to read the Braille, but they're seeing this and they're thinking, wow, this brand is being extremely intentional in what they're doing and these details. And it just, I think it creates that more premium experience, that this wasn't just
Hmm.
something just like drop shipped and put in a box and just slapped a shipping label on and now it's at your front door.
Yeah. Well, that's a good example, and we do publish this on YouTube too. So I think some people are at least going to see this. But you said at the beginning, flossing isn't something that's typically sexy or people even want to do or even want to think about. But through that experience right there, what you just showed us, you've taken something that people don't want to do, or and at least know they need to do, and have turned it into something that, hey, this is now a whole experience around it. It's something that mentally now I want to jump into.
Exactly, exactly. So, like, our whole thing is transforming flossing from a dreadful chore to a delightful ritual. And again, we were so lucky to be able to have the electric toothbrush as kind of the foundational model, because that is so enjoyable and easy to use. It's just like,
Yeah.
and I know some people prefer manual, but being able to kind of riff off of that and be like, okay, how can we bring the ease, the comfort, everything like that, the convenience into flossing? And truly, I mean, Flaus just, it's so incredible to hear from our customers that we've been solving all of those pain points. That was just so universal. And yeah, I'm just super proud. And it's been really rewarding getting to help people take care of themselves. Like there's a lot of value for
Sure.
people's confidence and self and sense of independence.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that just further motivates you and the rest of the team, right? It's not just about the dollars.
Exactly, and having that, like, that mission and that purpose, and so, we're actually incorporated as a public benefit corporation, and I remember when I made that decision at the time, because I have a lot of lawyers on my cap table, they're like, "Oh, I don't know, it's only been around for 10 years, it's really new, everyone does a Delaware C corp," that's, like, the common thing, and I was like, I believe this is where the business market is going to be heading. I think we're gonna see more of these because consumers wanna see that you are actually standing for something. It's not just, like, in your marketing, it's actually, like, in the DNA of the company, and so, by becoming a public benefit corporation, we're still taxed as a C corp, it still has all those benefits, but now we're actually, like, legally obligated, it's in our articles that in addition to trying to maximize shareholder profit, we're also trying to further accessibility, sustainability, innovation, and education in the oral care space. So these are really things that are fundamental to us. And
Hmm.
and we're now seeing, Patagonia's one, Pros is one, Allbirds was one. Like, I just think we're going to see that trend, and I'm really
Yeah.
excited to get to be kind of on the cutting edge of those sort of companies.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's not just that part of it that actually all of those things are actually good business. Like these are good business decisions.
Yes, absolutely, and it's so interesting how, a lot of companies and as you're going through this, it's like you wanna try to be as sustainable as possible, and especially when you're a young startup, you can't be everything. You can't do it, and so
Right.
everything's our minimum viable product, right? Like, even our
Hmm.
recycling program, it's our minimum viable product. We hacked this thing together and it's working, so and
Hmm.
eventually we'll get it better and better, but, it's interesting because there have been quite a few decisions where it's like, well, are we sure we want to go and use recyclable plastic? It can be more expensive than using non-recyclable plastic. And it's like, of course you need to make sure that that you have the business fundamentals are there, but this is something we're committed to doing and it might take a little hit to our profit margin instead of being 75% could be 80%. But again, it's that long-term play of
Yeah.
like consumers are gonna value this more than the short-term potential loss.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Samantha, this has been a really fun conversation. I know we've covered a heck of a lot of ground today, but I've really enjoyed hearing about your business and where you guys are headed. For those listening today that want to learn more, check out Floss or maybe have some questions for you about something we talked about today. Where are the best places for them to go?
Yeah, definitely. So as we mentioned, we're direct consumer, so you can find us at goflaus.com. So goflaus.com. Also, feel free to always hit us up on our socials. It's at goflaus. I'm always open to talking to pretty much anyone and everyone. I'm Samantha Coxe, and you can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram. And yeah, and hopefully we'll be coming to some retailers and dental offices near you.
I'm sure we will. So look forward to following you guys and keeping up with the journey. But Samantha, again, thanks for taking the time today. It was great talking with you.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Take care.